it's hard to compare a year one of a thing to year 10 of a thing. So I was very discouraged across year one because I'm like, man, we're not making as much money. We don't have as big of an audience, because it's a new thing. And what I was surprised by at the end of year one was I made almost to the dollar the same amount of money year one of Design System University as I did this year one of SuperFriendly. So it's like a total flipped business model.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of experience doing the first one and zero experience doing the second one. What I've learned over the last couple of years is that it's actually better to train folks who work in-house on how to do that than it is to be the outsourced provider of those things.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to The Digital Third. This is part 2 of the mini-series of how to reinvent yourself. This was recorded during our fishing trip with Chris Do. So in this episode, I speak with Dan Mall, legendary designer, entrepreneur, coach, and one of the most influential and insightful minds in the creative business space. So in this video, we discuss how he shut down SuperFriendly, an agency that worked with giants like Google, Nike. The New York Times recently made the website for Kamala Harris and her campaign. And then he evolved it into an education company called Design System University. So Dan shares about the emotions that come with starting something from scratch, the uncertainty, comparing it from what he left at a peak. And so we explore the mindset shifts necessary that he made to reinvent himself in this whole process. So as you saw in the trailer, we're on the barge. The video exposure was all over the place. We're trying to chase the sunset. So just ignore the visuals for now. I'm going to get an editor soon. Things will improve. But anyways, without further ado, enjoy the episode. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
It's going to be a really nice experience.
Yes, this might be my best and favorite podcast experience here already.
We're on for a good start.
We're, sitting on a barge in the middle of the Canadian wilderness.
This is like a one-of-a-kind experience.
It is. It's true.
Yeah. Super excited because I've been trying to get you on for a while. I've been busy. You've been a bit busy. We cross paths and at Config. You competed in the Reloom Design League.
That's right.
At the finals. So that's how we met. And I just think first off, it's a huge honor just to be sitting here with you.
I appreciate it, man.
And to connect with you in this super unique experience.
Yeah.
I want to talk about reinventing yourself. You've gone through a huge transition. But before we dive into that, I like to learn what type of life lessons or unique insights you've gained in this trip. So with fishing, we have a lot of fishing analogies with like sales, marketing, and baiting the fish, baiting the client, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
A lot. I'll try to keep it short, but one thing that's really cool is that we've had the experience to mix it up. So we've all gone out on different boats with different people, and everybody that I went out with, I learned something new from them, either about them or about me, and a lot of times about them, about me, right? Like because I'm going, okay, how can I apply what they have done and what they know to some of the stuff that I'm doing? And one of the things that jumps out to me is that this is not the kind of experience that I would normally do. Like I was reflecting on it this afternoon, and it was like these are all the things that I don't do. We're out on a barge in the middle of the ocean. I just learned to swim 2 years ago. So like water stuff is already uncomfortable for me.
Wow.
I get motion sick really easily. And yet we're out on the ocean on, like rough seas to get here. Luckily it was pretty smooth the last couple of days.
Right.
So what I've learned is I think I did this. I don't know that I had this conscious thought, but I think that I did this partially to be like, I'm going to do some stuff that challenges me. And then the flip side of the coin to that for me has been, I don't need to push myself too much to do things. Like, part of me is like, I stayed back this afternoon while everybody went out fishing because I wasn't feeling well.
Right.
And part of me is like, come on, man, just man up and, take some Dramamine and go. And then the other part of me is like, but I don't have to do that.
Right.
This is already uncomfortable enough for me. In a way that it might not be for others, and that's okay too. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is just giving myself permission to be like, I needed to take a nap this afternoon, so I took a nap this afternoon instead of going out, even though I only caught one fish so far.
Yeah.
And I wanted to catch more. That's okay, and being at peace at that.
That's interesting because there's a lot of pressure amongst all the other creatives here. We have 20 creatives, and everyone wants to get their fair share of the catch. And I picked that vibe from you where you know where you stand. You're very confident. Although, you got one fish, you could have got a lot more, but you know what you need, and there's a lot of self-assurance in that. I'm I assume that's just from a lot of experience, but maybe can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that quality, you need that amount of self-assurance and knowing what to do and what you need, and for self-care and all that stuff when you're transitioning into a new phase, a new journey.
Yeah, I think I can only describe it as a superpower.
Okay.
Because I'm like, I don't know where I actually learned this. I don't know that I was taught this. So I think I might have a superpower here. And the superpower is I've always had good boundaries.
Okay.
I've always been able to be very comfortable saying no. I've never, not never, but I'm pretty good at being impervious to peer pressure. You know, I have been all my life.
Okay.
And so I think that's a thing that I have as a skill. I'm realizing. And that has come in handy a bunch of different ways. Like I think that I'm able to prioritize things that I need and I want. And part of that is doing the work to be like, what is it that I want? You know, what do I actually want? Which is from time to time a difficult question to answer. But I think having good boundaries and being like, I don't want to do that. I want to do this other thing. Mm-hmm. And then also the fact that I'm pretty intentional about things. So I did spend some time thinking before this trip, like, what do I want this trip to be? And the fish catching part is just a bonus.
Yeah.
You know, it's spending time with 20 people, 19 of whom I don't know, right? Like, you're the only one here that I know, you know, other than Chris. So 18 people that I didn't know. I'm like, what I'd like to do is learn from these people who are all like incredible and amazing. And if I do that, that's money well spent, time well spent. Yep. And if I catch a fish or two, bonus on top of that. But even if I don't, I already knew in advance ahead of time, like it's not a wash because of that.
Yeah.
So there's pressure while we're here that like, hey, we all want to catch fish and we all want to do that. But to me, like I already have decided, you know, before we even got here, that fish catching isn't the number one priority. So I sort of have my own hierarchy of needs here that I know internally and I can operate with that. And that's usually helped me in my life.
Awesome. Do you feel like you've achieved what you wanted to get out of the trip already?
Hard. I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like it. I have the you know, the emotions of it. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I'll be able to like fully reflect on that until I'm back and maybe do some writing or journaling or you know, I shot a lot of photos and videos, and I think probably when I'm putting that stuff together, I'll be able to reflect more accurately and objectively to be like, yeah, I got what I wanted out of it.
Right. Okay. Some really good footage.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Okay, so I forgot to ask you for those who don't know you, to introduce yourself, share a little bit, and I'll add a little bit of context. So you had a very successful design agency, SuperFriendly, and it was focused on consulting work for design systems. You shut that down last year or like 2 years ago?
2022, yeah.
2022, yep. And then you transitioned and created Design System University. Yep. You also started Great Job, and you have a podcast, and that's directed around, and that's a totally separate thing.
Yep.
That's towards families, young kids, families transitioning from the age of like 8 to 15, like the preteens. 8 to 15,
that's right. Well, we call them the pivotals.
Okay.
Right, that age range, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I probably already spilled it out, but if you can share more of more context of like where you're coming from, and then how you're moving into the new era.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking that and for having me on the podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dan. I'm Dan Mall. I grew up as a designer. I grew up professionally as a designer and developer, and doing stuff on the web and with digital. And I've been doing that since 1998. Okay. 1998, I built my first website, so it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while, and gotten good over that. I've gotten good at that over the years, and then just really trying to find different places that the mind of a designer can add some value to. And I've been learning over many years that design isn't just the stuff that you make, although that's a part of it. It's not just sitting in front of a tool like Figma or Photoshop or Illustrator. That's part of it, making things beautiful, making things visceral, making things functional. It's part of it, but I think design is doing stuff on purpose. Right. And having some sort of output from that, some sort of sensory output from that. And so I'm learning that there's a lot of places to apply that. And that's the stuff that I'm trying to do in my life lately and in my career, is that the obvious answer for me was to apply design to the tech industry and the things that the tech industry makes. And I'm learning that like design can work everywhere. Right. You can design the way that you parent.
Yeah.
And so, the latest company that I started, Great Job, with my wife, is an experiment in that, to go like, what would it look like if people were more intentional about the way that they raise their kids? And so that is a design exercise, even though it's not about comping something or making some UI or some graphic design, although it might involve that.
Right.
So, I think that's one of the things that I'm experimenting with, is like, what are all the places where design can make a difference and make a positive influence on any particular given scenario or sector?
Yeah. It'll be interesting how you apply design thinking framework around building or raising families.
Coincidentally, that was one of the conversations in the boat today.
Oh, really? Okay.
Literally, we were talking about the double diamond process and divergent thinking, like all. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. And
Amazing.
and there's some stuff that I didn't even realize that through that conversation, I was like, wow, this applies really well.
Huh. Yeah, it's a universal framework.
It is.
I feel.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so you transition into this whole new phase. We're talking about reinventing yourself. Did you have to? What was the decision-making process in jumping the gun and taking the leap of faith?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for you to consider and chew on it? Like, walk me through that process leading up to, okay, I'm actually going to shut down the agency and just take on this new thing.
Yeah. I think with a lot of things, it's a combination of skill and luck, right? So some things were things that were very deliberate on my end, and then some things were just like the timing of it, came together in that way. So it maybe 50-50, something like that. So ran an agency for about 10 years. Around the 5 or 6 year mark, I started to get a little bit antsy. And before that, I would jump from job to job every 3 years. Where I think a lot of people do that in the tech industry. So like I was able to last a little bit more than that. But around 5 years, I was like, I'm no longer creatively satisfied with being a designer, a creative director, working on client accounts. So I started to transition into that and go like, where I normally would have tried to jump to another company, the value of having my own company was, well, I can create a new job within my own company.
Right.
And so I don't have to do this big switch in order to get something new, some new type of fulfillment. So around the 5 or 6 year mark, I was like, I'm the CEO of a company, just in the same way that I'm the janitor of the company, right? Because I'm the only one here.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean to be a CEO? And so that was the experiment that I decided that I wanted to try. It was to go like, let me learn how to be a CEO. What does that actually mean? And so that was a couple of years. And then for a couple of years, it was like, well, let me figure out how I can be a coach to my teams, internally. So every couple of years, I would find some new shift, some new job that I had. And then I started to get to the point where I'm like, I actually don't know what next job I would like here. I can't find one. I could manufacture it, but it would be forced. And so anything that I was starting to come up with was like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to learn here anymore. I don't know that this is a vehicle for the things that I want to learn. So that was part of it. That was just kind of feeling that. And then the other part of it was, coincidentally, a lot of our accounts were sort of coming to a good transition point where it was like some things were coming to a close and then other things were about to kick off. And it was like, well, if I'm ever going to shut it down, this seems like a very convenient time to do that, where I don't have to pull the plug artificially on something or anything like that. So timing-wise, it seemed like this seems to be the right time to do this if I'm going to do this. Otherwise, maybe I might have to wait a couple of years for that to happen naturally. So timing-wise, it felt like the right thing. And then, maybe the third factor in that is one of the things I realized at my agency where we specialize in design systems. What I've learned over the last couple of years is that it's actually better to train folks who work in-house on how to do that than it is to be the outsourced provider of those things. I find that it was more successful to the work. And so transitioning from SuperFriendly, a services agency, into a training company, Design System University, actually was a better fit for our customers at the time. And it was actually a much easier sales pitch for us too. And so a lot of that would just seem to happen naturally. So it was kind of the convergence of those three things and more that led me to go, okay, I think it's time for this to be, this chapter to close and a new chapter to start.
I see. Okay, so it was a natural evolution to that.
Sure.
I see. Because to me on the outside, Design System University seems like an education company where the other one's more service-based. But I guess you're offering some consulting and services through DSU?
Yep. And I don't advertise that at all because I'm not sure that I want to do that. And also, I kind of want to get away from that stuff too. But like I'll say, SuperFriendly, what we would pitch to a client, clients would come in and they would say, we want you to design and build a design system for us. And we would go, we're not going to do that, but what if we trained you on how to do it? And they're like, weird. Like, you're an agency and
Right.
okay, I guess, right? So it always felt weird. I had the same exact sales pitch with Design System University. What if I trained your team on how to do it through self-paced courses, through consulting, and they're like, Design System University training, yeah, makes sense.
Oh, wow.
It's like just the reframe of that
Yeah.
same exact sales pitch, but from a company called SuperFriendly, weird. From a company called Design System University, makes sense.
That's the power of branding.
Totally, 100%.
Okay. So I'd love to dive into the brand strategy or your process with that. Okay. So it seemed like you're coming up with some resistance or questioning on how your brand messaging was coming from SuperFriendly.
Yep.
And then that informed you to say, okay, we need to kind of change the way we position ourselves and name ourselves. Can you walk me through more of the thought process of just shifting towards that? And I guess what I'm trying to find out is, again, was it a major reinvention or just a brand identity update?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding of brand, I'm not a brand person. I've worked on branding and things like that before. I'm not an expert at that, but my understanding of brand is somebody's gut feeling about a thing.
Okay.
So I think a lot of times when we talk about rebranding, what we often mean by that is a new logo, new colors, a new name, maybe, something like that. And a lot of times that can be true, but it's not always true. So the way that I think about like SuperFriendly to Design System University, the transition between those two things is that the brand actually stayed the same. It was a renaming more than it was a rebranding, because I think the gut feeling was the same. It was we're getting expert advice from someone who has done this a lot, and the collation of those ideas. So I think it was just transferring a lot of that brand equity to a differently named company.
Okay.
Whether that's a rebranding, I'm not sure. I'll let brand folks argue about that. But I never thought about it as a rebranding or anything like that. I just thought about it as a repackaging, maybe. Maybe that's a better phrase or a better word for it.
Right.
Than a rebranding.
Okay. It reminds me of the recent update from ConvertKit to Kit.
That's right.
And you know the team from there? Or?
Yeah, and I'm in as part of their interview series. I'm on some of their videos talking about some of that stuff. And for them, I actually think that they are calling it a rebranding, and part of my feedback to them is like, I actually don't think they're rebranding. I think they're renaming, but I think that the brand that they have, the gut feeling that people have, and I say this as I'm a customer of theirs, I use their product. The gut feeling, their current name actually didn't match the gut feeling, and so the new name actually fits their old brand better. Right. So is that a rebranding? I don't know. Okay. But to me, that's why I'm like, I actually don't think that they're rebranding. Okay. I think they're renaming the company and actually picking a name that fits better what they do.
Got it. Okay.
But that's one man's armchair quarterbacking here.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. All right. So it seems like it's a renaming. I'm trying to process here.
Yeah.
Were there any major changes for you, even though it's like a new name and slightly different visual identity, in terms of team structures and how the company operated? Was that like a big shift? And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, again, like, how did you navigate through the changes?
Yeah.
What were like the good sides, the bad sides, and everything in between?
Yeah. So I'm still currently navigating those changes, and like I don't know that like whatever transition is there, I'm not like that transition is done. I think it's definitely very much in progress. There's a few things that I've learned so far through that process. One of the things is I've realized how flipped the business models are. So as an example, a services model, what we do is at SuperFriendly, we would pitch a client or propose something, and they would say, yes, we'd like to hire you for that thing. We agree on a dollar amount. We write up contracts. They pay some amount of deposit, anywhere from 0 to 100% deposit. And then essentially what we do is we earn the money as we work, right? So we get money up front, and then we sort of like earn that money as we go on. And now, if you look at it from a time-based way, which I don't always do, but just using that as a frame to look at it, the more time we work on that, the less money we've actually earned per unit, month, week, day, whatever. So essentially what I'm saying is you make a bunch of money and then you earn that money, right? You work the money. Working on a product company where we have courses and workbooks and things like that, it's totally flipped.
Right.
I and my team, we work on the product or the products first, and we have earned zero money. And then we drop that thing. We might try to build some hype for it first to let people know something is coming, but we've made $0 at that point.
Right.
The minute it's live, people are buying it, and then you earn more money as it goes along. So it's like a total flipped business model.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of experience doing the first one and zero experience doing the second one.
Yeah.
So I'm learning more and more about that and what that means. And I'm also learning about my emotional state and how different that is.
Right.
Where like it's really nerve-wracking to work on something, even if you have interest in it. You have interest in signals and waiting lists, and like it's hard to work on a thing going like, man, I hope people want this.
Right.
Even though I have signals and I have affirmations, it doesn't become real until somebody spends the first dollar on that product.
Right.
And then it's like, sigh of relief. And then you watch the graph climb. Oh, more money this week, more money next week. More people are buying. And so my emotional state is much more apprehensive when I'm working on the product, and then more and more relief as you go on.
Yeah.
Whereas with client work, it's sort of the opposite. Okay. It's like, we got a ton of money up front. And then as the project goes on, you're sort of always at risk at like, is our client happy? And are we doing the right work? And are we creating value? So it's just totally different from a sales process, a business model perspective.
Right. Okay. That's really, really insightful. What are like the top main lessons you've learned after you closed your first year, right? You're a year into this new direction. Or rather, maybe to reframe it, if you were to give yourself advice a year ago on what you've learned.
I like both of those questions. I'll answer both and I'll combine them. It's hard to compare a year 1 of a thing to year 10 of a thing. Mm-hmm. So I was very discouraged across year 1 because I'm like, man, we're not making as much money. We don't have as big of an audience, because it's a new thing.
Right.
And what I was surprised by at the end of year 1 was I looked at our books and I looked at all the stuff that we were doing. I made almost to the dollar the same amount of money year 1 of Design System University as I did this year 1 of SuperFriendly.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But the whole year of Design System University year 1, I was very discouraged because it's like, man, because I was comparing it to year 10 of running an agency.
Right.
Wow, we're killing it. We have good market position. We're, like all of that stuff that we didn't have for a new thing. But I'm like, but if I compare it to the year 1 to year 1, totally on track.
Yeah.
And once I realized that, like, that's the reframe.
Humble beginnings.
Yeah. The reframe is like, right, man, you're starting a thing. Like, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
It's all right. Like that, it's fine. And even if it was less, still year 1.
Yeah.
Don't compare it to year 10. Those are 2 different things.
That's so interesting to hear because you've already gone through one iteration of like a business cycle and growth for a decade, and then to start over again, that takes a lot of humility. For those who are starting, like so myself, I'm reinventing myself. What kind of characteristics or qualities or things would you suggest to develop or to take on to ride these humble times, these not so fruitful seasons?
My friend Alex Hellman gave me some really good advice about this. I forget the term. I wish I remembered it, but it's something like, do you play video games at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So you ever play like old platformers, Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo? Okay. When you beat Super Mario Brothers, you go world 1 through 8. You kill Bowser in the castle, right? What happens after that is they don't go like, all right, shut off the game now. Mm-hmm. They let you play it again, but now you play it again with all the power-ups. Now you have all these, and there's a term for it. I think it's called like Game Plus or something like that.
Right.
Where it's like you get to play the game again, but you have all these new skills.
Yeah.
And you have all the power-ups that you've gained by playing it the first time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, interesting. It's not starting over. In a way it is, but you have all these skills to bring to year 1 now that you didn't have in the last year 1.
Right.
And I was like, I felt really empowered by that advice. that it's like when I started SuperFriendly, that was the first time I had started a business.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm starting a new business, but I've had 10 years of running a business.
Yeah.
I didn't have that when I started SuperFriendly.
Right.
So it's like, what an advantage that is.
Yeah.
There's definitely some drawbacks to that too, but I love that piece of advice that he gave.
I love that. Yeah.
That, you know, it's you are playing the game over, but you have new XP, you have new weapons, you have all that stuff. You're not starting from zero again.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Starting over is not the same thing as starting at zero.
Right. You've established the initial skill set from the first 10 years, and then now you're just going to like a new vertical.
Totally.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where you land 10 years from now, and hopefully it'll be at least 10x.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll see.
From year 10 at SuperFriendly. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Great. I think those are the questions I have so far.
Man.
So, thank you for your time. I know the sun sets down. We are in silhouette mode now
We
for
are.
those watching
Yeah, that's
YouTube.
right.
Any final thoughts on what we just talked about, or even where we're at now?
Oh, this is great, man. I'm having a blast. Thank you for sitting with me and asking me these questions and having a good conversation.
Awesome. For those who want to get to know you more or contact you in any way, how can they reach you?
danmall.com is my website. I send out a weekly newsletter. So if anybody wants to hear more of my thoughts, you get it every Friday morning.
Awesome.
And Dan Mall on Twitter, Dan Mall on LinkedIn. Basically, any place that you do social media stuff, look for Dan Mall. I'm probably there.
Fantastic. All right, Dan, cheers.
Cheers.
Let's
Josh,
have
thanks.
dinner. Great pod. Thanks.